Hi, I'm Richard Byrne, and welcome to episode number 21 of the Practical EdTech Podcast. Or is it 21 this way? 21. Episode number 21 of the Practical EdTech Podcast. In this episode, as always, I'm going to share some news and notes from the week in educational technology, share some thoughts from my classroom, and answer a handful of questions from readers and listeners and viewers like you. Let's get started. So first up in the news and notes category, if you missed the big news and you're a Google Slides user, you'll be really happy to know that Google Slides will now have an audio feature available to all users by the end of November. This is a feature that they've been teasing all year long. First made the announcement in the spring, Northern Hemisphere spring. First made the announcement in the spring. Then it went away. Some people had it, some people didn't. It was on hiatus. Now it's back. Official statement from Google came out this week. I already made a video about how to use it. I have it in 2 of my 4 accounts. It's a really great tool. There's still room for improvement in it. It's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than any of the extensions or other workarounds that are out there. So check it out. You can find it on freetechforteachers.com or on my YouTube channel. I've got a tutorial about it. Really exciting thing. Now, as a side note to that, or a related note to that, Keynote and PowerPoint have had this same feature for years. So it's always funny to get excited about something that has been available in other tools for many, many years, and now is finally available in Google Slides. So, this week, this Monday, it was Monday, I tweeted that I'm considering becoming an iPhone user. After a decade of being an Android user, I've had every iteration of Android from 1.0 to whatever version we're on now, which I think is 10.1, something like that. I've been an Android user. But I'm thinking about changing. And the reason I'm thinking about changing has a lot to do with data and data use. Not so much data use as in the amount of data I'm using, but what Google is able to collect and track and use from Android phones. Part of this ties into a New York Times article about Google's Project Nightingale, where a lot of health data didn't necessarily get anonymized the way it should have. So there's that. Plus, Google just bought Fitbit, which gives them access to all kinds of other health data. So I'm just kind of considering my options, and also I think the new iPhone Pro looks really cool, and I want to try it out. But I tweeted that out, and the responses have been kind of split down the middle. I tweeted that out, and it's pretty much some people are like, yeah, do it, and the other half are, no, why would you want to do that? Android's so much better. So I guess it comes down to me making my own decision. It's a big investment, $1,000 to buy the phone, so I'm not sure I'm ever gonna do it anytime soon, but I am thinking about it. My current Android phone, which I love, is getting a little long in the tooth and starting to experience some problems, mostly battery related, but it's getting a little long in the tooth, so before too long I'm going to have to make that change. Other Apple news this week, the new 16-inch MacBook Pro. So now you have a 13-inch or a 16-inch, and they're not cheap either way. The 16-inch one is really not cheap. I think the cheapest one you can get is $2,400. So, not cheap any way you look at it. 15-inch models seem to have gone the way of the CD-ROM. Which is to say, non-existent anymore. What a little bit of Google news. Speaking of Google and how they're using data, Google is getting into the banking business. Yeah, that's right. TechCrunch had an article this week about Google launching a new checking account product called Cash, C-A-C-H-E. Get it? There's a play on words there. Cash. And they're not doing the Google's not going to be the bank. I didn't quite understand all the nuance of it. I'm not a banking person by any stretch of the imagination. But basically, Google's going to be partnering with banks to offer this checking account. So the bank will still do the banking part of it, I guess. I don't really understand it. But it's interesting. So there's that. A new product, a new version of an old product is out from Basecamp. Basecamp is really popular project management software. It's been used for probably close to a decade now with all kinds of organizations. This week they launched a new free version for schools or for students, freelancers, small nonprofits, schools. It's called Basecamp Personal. You can find it at basecamp.com/personal. Some people are really excited about it. I think it's a nice step, it's a nice tool. I've used it in the past. I don't know how much schools really need it in terms of students. I'm not sure how many high school students really need it. You can do a lot of the same things with other tools, but it's worth noting because it is a service that's used widely in businesses. So worth noting that Basecamp does offer now a personal version that's available for free. My last little highlight, I guess, for the week, an article from Alan Levine, who you'll find his work at cogdogblog.com. I always enjoy reading his stuff. Don't always agree with it, but I always enjoy reading it. Always learn something new when I go to his blog. He had an article this week about a service called Pixie, Pixsy, and the article is called Reversing and Reverse Image Search, and it's all about this tool Pixie that looks for copies of your original photographs and where they've been used online. So it's great. It could be a good tool to see where your personal photographs may have ended up online. Now, Pixie's not doing this just to be nice. They also offer a legal service that will file takedown notices if you find your copyrighted work has been used somewhere inappropriately. But check out Alan's article. It's really interesting reading. Cogdogblog.com is where you'll find it. Good article. Reversing and Reverse Image Search. So some thoughts from my school, my week at school. We had our first snow day of the year this week, which is partly why I'm still wearing my jacket as I record this podcast right now. It's cold in my office. Snow on the ground. We had our first snow day, and as is to be expected, my freshmen were completely thrown off by it. My freshman students, some of them came back to school. They didn't know what day it was. We have an alternating block schedule, a green day, gold day schedule. So, they lost track of their days, didn't know how a snow day would, if they kept going or what happened. So that's part of it. And fortunately, we have door greeters who stand at the door at the entrance of the school and tell people if it's green day or gold day. So that was nice. Shout out to my friend Christy, my colleague Christy, who did that this week. In addition to our snow day, we also had Veterans Day off. So we had 2 days off in a row. Plus my block scheduling meant that for some of my students, I didn't see them for over a week. Which with freshmen is a long time to go because you get out of a groove. It's a long time to go. Now my juniors and seniors, they didn't miss a beat. Didn't affect them at all, really. Speaking of my juniors and seniors, one of my juniors did a really amazing, I shouldn't say it's amazing, but did a really great thing. It was probably the highlight of my week. Two of my juniors and one of my seniors are working together on this Rover project. And I've talked about it on other podcasts. So they're working on this Rover project, and we're at a point now where we're pushing the limits of everyone's technical abilities. Mine, theirs, everyone's technical abilities and knowledge. And we had to get a little bit of information about the particular motors that we're using. These are motors that are no longer in production, but the company still exists. And so we've been doing some research, we've been trying to do some research online, and finally one of my students just said, hey, why don't I just call them and see if they'll give me the information? And he did. And the first number he called, they didn't give him the information, but they gave him a number for a distributor who sold the product, who he then called, and that person gave him a number for a repair service. And that got him the information he needed about the motors so that we could program the motors to work as part of the Rover project. It just gets back to the idea of, you let your kids pick an interesting project, and if they're really interested in it, they'll take the initiative and do some things that you might not have done. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure that I would have called all around looking for that information. But he did, and it was great. And he's moving forward in the project, so it's really, really interesting work. And hopefully, by the end of the school year, the thing is actually running. This is going to be what at first seemed like it might be a semester project. It's really going to turn out to probably be a year-long project. But it's a great project nonetheless. So, some questions from readers, viewers, and listeners like you for this week's episode of the Practical Ed Tech Podcast. First one came from Krista. Do you know of a free website or software where a student can build a chatbot app for cell phones? So my suggestion was to try getacquainted.co. Getacquainted.co. You can create your own chatbot, and of course you can use it on a cell phone or you can use it in your web browser. Get it at getacquainted.co. And it helps to spell it correctly. Getacquainted.co. Build your own chatbot. Great little tool there. The question came from Melissa, who wrote, I'm trying to create a digital sorting game with at least 6 categories, an easy online tool or apps you know of. So at first I suggested classtools.net, but turns out classtools.net had a template for a sorting game, but it only went up to 4 categories. Melissa needed 6 categories. So my follow-up suggestion was to use flippity.net. Flippity.net has a mix and match template that you can for making a mix and match game, essentially a sorting game, and that goes up to 10 categories. So hopefully that gets you sorted out. No pun intended, Melissa. Related note about classtools.net. So classtools.net is run by Russell Tarr, who is a teacher in France, a history teacher in France. He's English, lives in France, teaches history. And he created classtools.net. And sometime in the last couple of weeks, Russell has decided to stop tweeting altogether and has actually zeroed out his Twitter account. He didn't delete the Twitter account, just zeroed everything out, took everything off of it. And now if you go to his Twitter profile, it says, I used to share my ideas here on Twitter. I no longer do. Go to classtools.net/blog. Also took down the ClassTools Twitter account. So kind of an interesting move to delete that. I have not talked to Russell about it yet. I plan to, about why he did that, what the motivation was for that. But kind of interesting to see, particularly as more and more people are starting to people who are on various social media for a long time are now starting to delete some of their social media profiles for various reasons. So I'm just curious to see what that's about. All right. A question came from Chuck, who asked, I'm trying, not successfully, to present at conferences. I've only been accepted to present at places that want me to join their organization and pay their conference fee, which doesn't sound right to me, although I know ISTE does the same. What tips, advice would you give to someone to help them build proposals that get accepted? Thanks, Chuck. So, Chuck, here's where I'll start. Well, first of all, put in a proposal to speak at the Practical Ed Tech Creativity Conference. It's free. I'm not going to charge you a fee to do that. It's free for everybody. So you could put that proposal in if you want. Regarding the paying, the conference registration fee, early on, I think I did that a couple of times for conferences, and you kind of have to pay your dues. Again, no pun intended. to get your feet wet, to get the practice in. No one's going to pay you to speak right out of the gate unless you happen to have a New York Times bestseller or something like that. You got to practice and get your feet wet. All that said, to get your proposal accepted, couple of things that I've found have helped me. And there are still conferences that I give proposals to, and sometimes I don't get accepted. I got rejected for one just a couple weeks ago, which I thought was a great proposal, but apparently it didn't fit with what they wanted. But I've been accepted more times than not, so I'll tell you this. Most conferences are looking for conference titles that have the ability to get people in the door. And that's the biggest thing, because remember, any conference that's worth going to has a lot of overhead. Even small conferences have a lot of overhead. When I run the Practical EdTech Summer Camp, I'm on the hook for $4,000 for 25 people before the thing even starts. So you can imagine that's for 25 people. You can imagine what it's like if you're running something that's going to draw in 1,000 people. So you got to get people in the door. So that's the first thing. Consider your titles. And part of me hates doing that. Part of me hates having to write a title just for the sake of getting people in the door. But that's kind of what you have to do. It's kind of part of the game, if you will. The other part of it is with your proposal itself. In your description, it's always helpful to write in some key takeaways for attendees. It could be 3 things that attendees will know how to do by the time they're done, or 5 key considerations for everyone to think about as they get back to their school, their classroom, whatever. But however you want to phrase it, having those clear takeaways is really, really helpful. And then you want to pick a topic that is popular, but not so popular that there's going to be 12 other people doing the exact same thing. And it might be something you're really passionate about, but there just isn't a whole lot of other people passionate about it. I'll give you the example. I love Google Earth. I love Google Earth and Google Maps, and I'll talk about it till the cows come home. I could do a 3-day workshop on Google Earth. I could fill up 24 hours on Google Earth. But having done that at plenty of conferences now, I can tell you it doesn't get people in the door the way 7 awesome things you can do with Google Docs does. Likewise, doing something like 12 magic steps to Arduino projects has some clear takeaways. That's probably a good title. Like 12 magic steps to Arduino projects. Probably a great title. But if the conference itself doesn't have a whole lot of people who are interested in Arduino, might not get there. So, those are my big tips. Building those clear takeaways, and depending on the conference, make sure you get some research in there. Google Scholar is your best friend in there. People don't want to generally hear about research papers, but having some evidence in there, 3 or 4 mentions of some scholarly articles that you've actually read, can help with that as well. And good luck too. Like I said, sometimes it's just luck of the draw too. Maybe 3 other people put in the same proposal, and you just happen to be the odd person out in that one. All right, question came from Wesley. I've just watched a video about creating rubrics in Google Classroom. I'm from South Africa. I followed the steps accordingly, but it appears that we don't even have the option of creating a rubric. Any idea why? Yes, Wesley, because it hasn't been rolled out to everybody yet. That's why. The rubrics in Google Classroom is a beta product. It's still in testing, so it just hasn't been rolled out to everybody. That's why you're not seeing it. The other part is, your domain may not be on the rapid release domain. Talk to your domain administrator, your IT administrator. Make sure you're on the see if you're on the rapid release domain. But it's a beta product, and your IT administrator, your domain administrator, did have to apply to get access to it early. Another question here, Google question. Is there a Gmail add-on or app that will allow me to grab pre-written email response to send to people having the same question? For example, if someone emails me asking for instructions on how to do X, can I just grab that canned response to use in my reply? Yes. So, you got a couple of options here. Number one, there is a canned responses option in Gmail. It's available to everyone now. Go into your Gmail settings. So go into your Gmail account, and you'll be able to activate it in your Gmail settings. And you can create canned responses. Again, on my YouTube channel, I've got a video about how to do that. So that's one option. Your other option would be to use an auto text expander. There's a Chrome extension called Auto Text Expander that will do exactly what you're describing. Put in pre-written text that you have. Auto Text Expander is great because you just have to type a little keyboard shortcut. And there's no copying and pasting at all. It's just a quick, hey, click, type in three keys, a combination of 3 keys, and boom, it fills out paragraphs for you if you've written a whole paragraph out. So, yeah, 2 options there. 2 options. And I've got videos on my YouTube channel about how to do both of those things. And the last question that I have came from Mary, who asked, I have a group of 8th grade students who would like to record an audio version of a play they have written based on a short story. Sounds like a cool project. They want to include sound effects. Some they have found online, some they've created. Can you recommend a Chrome extension for this? The students have MacBook Airs to do the recording. So I wrote back to Mary and I said, Mary, if you have MacBook Airs, you should have access to GarageBand, and GarageBand is going to have way more options available to them than any Chrome extension, or at least as many options as any Chrome extension out there, and isn't going to require installation of anything additional. I would use GarageBand. GarageBand is going to give them everything they need and then more in terms of sound effects and sound editing. So if you have MacBook Airs, use GarageBand. That's what I would do. GarageBand is free, by the way. If you own MacBook Airs or Mac computers, you have GarageBand. It's free. So just use that. All right. So that concludes this episode of the Practical EdTech Podcast. Coming up in a couple of weeks is the Practical EdTech Creativity Conference. I'll be announcing all of those sessions. I know in the last podcast I said I'm announcing them soon. I'm really announcing them soon. I'm still waiting for just 2 other presenters to get back to me with their confirmation. But otherwise, we've got 9 awesome sessions lined up, and you'll be able to check them all out real soon at practicaledtech.com and on freetechforteachers.com. On both places. So that's that. Have a great weekend. And as always, if you have any questions for me, send me an email. Richard@burn.media is my email address. Bye-bye.